Welcome to my channel, and I'm back with you once again with another video of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Nowadays I'm doing a series of videos for the Boeing 778, which is the default plane for the Microsoft Flight Simulator, and in this regard this is going to be the fourth video in which I will tell you how to manage the descent and perform an ILS approach and landing. Before this I've done 3 videos which includes the FMC configuration, how to start this plane from the cold and dark state, and how to fly this plane on autopilot. While making this video, I'm keeping this thing in my mind that the beginners will be watching it, because all my videos are for the beginners or at a very basic level of flight simulation. So I will try to keep things simple, and I will try to enable all the beginners to actually perform a descent and then land this plane using ILS approach. Right now, I'm doing a short flight from Heathrow to Frankfurt, and as you can see it on the FMC or the flight management computer, that the top of descent is only 130 nautical miles away. If you don't know how to access this page progress, then you can press this button over here. So if you're at this page or at this page, you can press progress and you can access the progress page, and you will see that top of descent is 127 nautical miles away. So after this, you will actually start the descent, and even if you look at the navigation display, the top of descent is coming. So there are a few things that you have to consider before you start the descent, or you have to refer to before you start the descent. First of all, to which altitude you should descend. 10,000, 12,000, 15,000. So it's a big decision that you have to take. For this, you have to consult the airport charts, and you can also, where did it go? So you can also consult the flight management computer. So let me just tell you a trick. So this is the flight plan. Okay. So if you go over here in the option legs, you will see all the flight constraints coming, the speed and plus the altitude. So if you keep on pressing next page, eventually there is also discontinuity coming. Let me also just get rid of it. Okay, so I've now deleted the discontinuity. So let's come over here and see, this is runway 25 center at which I will be landing. The speed is coming as 240. It's very high. I have to reduce the speed. And plus over here, you can see the altitude is coming 388 for this runway, 388 feet above the sea level. Before this point, FF25C, you're seeing there is another altitude, 2,630. And before this, there's another point, red go, which says 4,000 above. So it means you should be almost above 4,000 feet at this point, and by this point you should be at 2,630. This is the glide slope, or the angle of the pitch is coming. So after this point, you will actually start to descend towards the runway, and you will pitch down the nose by 3 degrees. So you will keep on descending towards the runway. Eventually you will touch the runway at the right point. While performing an ILS approach, remember this thing, that ILS approach is performed with the help of a navigation device which is at the ground, which is known as the localizer. It is actually a device which emits the radio frequencies picked up by the plane, and then the plane knows whether it's aligned with the runway, vertical and lateral, which you can say alignment with the runway. So it should be there. So you should be in the center line, and plus you should touch the runway at the right point, so that if you start applying the brakes and you activate the reverse thrust, then within a reasonable distance you stop at the runway. So that's it, and I can just show you over here on the charts. You can also do it without the charts, but it's good to have access to the charts. If you don't have access to Navigraph, you can try looking for these charts over the internet. So this is 25 center. If I click this, I will be able to see the approach plate for this runway. So how much distance to cover? Let's even keep an eye on this. 103 nautical miles to go. So we have to do some settings. So first of all, you have to actually set the heading of the runway, 246 degrees. So let's set this heading over here. You must be wondering why I'm setting the heading of the runway over here, because you have to actually fly in the heading if you are communicating it with the ATC, or you are using VATSIM. In some cases, you might get an instruction from the ATC to fly in the heading, and especially after the missed approach. As you can see, the missed approach procedure is coming over here, that as soon as you miss the approach, your speed should not be more than 220 knots. And then you have to climb to 5,000 feet heading in the direction of 246 degrees. So that's why you enter this. Because after the missed approach, you don't fly on the VNAV mode or the LNAV mode. If you activate the autopilot, then you fly in the heading mode. So you can press this button by flying in this mode. So once I will be doing the missed approach procedures, I will just take you through that. So let's keep 246 degrees over here. And then the altitude to which I have to descend is 4,000 feet. As you can see, this is the point at which you will be intercepting the glide slope, and then you will proceed towards the runway. So right now you can see the runway altitude is coming 363 feet above the sea level. But over here for the ILS, the decision height or the decision altitude is coming as 563 feet, or rather 200 feet above the ground. Because if you add 200 to 363 is 563. So if you are setting your altitude or the minimums in baro, you will be using 563, and in case of radio, you're using 200. If you're performing an ILS category 2 or 3 approach, rather to be more precise, category 3 approach, then you use this radio, because radio measures your distance from the ground accurately than the baro. But in this case, we can set the decision altitude DA. So let's change it to baro, and let's set 563 over here. And this is the altitude at which you will hear minimums, because at this point, if you still decide to abort the landing due to any reason, maybe your plane is not aligned with the runway, or maybe there is some other issue, the visibility is not really clear, so then you can just perform a go around. So at this altitude, you will be hearing the sound minimums, and before this, you will be hearing the sound approaching minimums, which means you are going to approach the minimums, and then you can just keep an eye on the runway. And still, if you think you cannot proceed with the landing, then you can perform a missed approach, go around, and then, or maybe you can go to some other airport if the weather is not good or there is any issue at the runway. So that's it. So you have to set the minimums. And plus, you also have to look at the frequency of the ILS. As you can see, it's coming over here, ILS DME. DME is actually distance measuring equipment. So once you are near this localizer, you're in the range of it, you will even see the distance. So 246 degrees is the heading of it, and 111.55 is the frequency. So if I go over here and click NavRad, you will see the ILS frequency is already coming. So you don't really have to worry about it, it's entered. But if it's not, then you have to enter this frequency. Simply type in 111.55 and press this soft key on the left side, which is adjacent to ILS, and your ILS frequency will be updated. So that's how you do it. So this is how you read the approach plate. So I will be coming in from this direction, DF403, DF49, and so on and so forth, and I will come to DF526. I've tried few landings at Frankfurt, and by this point the speed doesn't reduce, so I have to reduce the speed myself. I cannot rely on the VNAV, so I will be just showing you how it happens. Another thing for the landing, remember this thing, that there are 3 things that actually stop the plane once you land. One is the reverse thrust, second is the speed brake, and third is the auto brake. So reverse thrust is actually a way in which, or kind of a procedure which actually reduces or reverses the thrust of the engine. The engine cover is just open, and the thrust of the engine is reversed, which helps the plane to stop, because you cannot stop on the brakes. Plane is coming at a very high speed, it's got so much load in it. So if you try to use only the brakes can heat up, the tires can burst, or in these planes there's a mechanism that if there's a certain temperature rise, the tires also deflate, because then they can burst if they are too hot. So that's why there are so many issues. So that's why you don't use only the brakes, you also use the reverse thrust. So the moment you'll touch the runway, you will activate the reverse thrust. How I activate the reverse thrust? I have actually configured the reverse thrust on my controller. I'm using the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro. If you look at this button 4, so as soon as I touch the runway, I press this button and give full throttle for the reverse thrust, because thrust, okay, the cover is open, but you have to give power to it, power to the engine. So you keep on pressing this button and then you adjust the thrust in such a way that the plane stops. So if you look at these levers, these are actually for the reverse thrust. So you pull them back after the landing, and the maximum position gives full reverse thrust to the engine. That's it. And with this, you also activate the speed brakes. Speed brakes, I'll just show you right now. Activated. No, I just armed them. You see these flap kind of things on the wings? They create drag. So when they create drag, the plane stops. Let me just deactivate that. I don't want to mess with the... It's deactivated. Okay. So the speed brakes actually create drag, due to which the speed reduces. So as soon as you activate the reverse thrust, the speed brakes will also come into action. So that's why you have to arm them. In order to arm them, you have to simply hold it and pull it out like this, and then you will see speed brake on coming over here. And you can also set the auto brake. Auto brake, I'm setting it to 4. For the planes, actually there is an electronic flight bag which is over here, which gives you your landing performance calculation. Tells you that with the given configuration, how long will it take you to stop at the runway. So if you're stopping at the runway in a reasonable distance, then these settings are okay. Otherwise you have to adjust it. As in this plane, it's not there, so that's why I'm just using my experience to do all these settings. But remember, reverse thrust is required. It's important. Speed brakes are important. Auto brakes are important, but the intensity of the auto brakes, maybe you can go for 1, 2, 3, or 4. Usually for my landings, I use 4. But you can change it accordingly as per your convenience. Right now you can see the plane is approaching top of descent, and it's 33 nautical miles away. So what I can do is this. I can reduce the altitude, and if you can see, if I do changes over here, nothing will happen, because in order to start the descent, I have to press this button like this. Then the descent will start. So right now nothing will happen. I can keep it like this, and as soon as the plane is near the top of descent or crosses the top of descent, the descent will start. It happened to me twice, but for the last 2 flights, I don't know, it's not happening. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but it should happen. So let's wait for it, and if the plane doesn't start to descend, then I can do it manually. Some little more distance to cover, and let's see if the descent starts. Otherwise, I can just start the descent. Let me just adjust it. I set it to 4,100, so everything is good so far. Seat belts I have set to auto, so you can even turn them on. Seatbelt signs once you start the descent. Otherwise, you can just keep it like this. Lights, I will turn them on below 10,000 feet. Weather is clear, and remember this thing, that during this flight there will also come a transition altitude, and altitude at which you have to change the barometric pressure from standard to the one at that airport at which you are landing. As soon as you will cross the transition altitude, the color of the standard will change, and a box will appear around it. So at this time you have to change the barometric pressure. You can get it from the ATIs. If you are doing a flight with the ATC, then you will get it from the ATC. Otherwise, you can also Google it. You can get it from the simulator as well. As now I'm using clear skies weather. If I change it to live weather, I think then I can pull this meter information. But right now for this flight, I'm using clear weather. As you can see, the pressure is coming 1013. So I will adjust it accordingly, 1013. Let's see if the descent starts. Otherwise, you have to press the button. Remember, you don't want to miss the top of descent. Otherwise, you will... And the descent has started. I didn't press the button. And now as soon as the plane crossed the top of descent, the descent automatically started. But if it doesn't start to descend, then I told you before, you can press this button to start the descent. Right now you can see your lateral and vertical deviation from the descent path is coming, and plus the flight path. So if this is your LDAV, which is known as the lateral deviation, it has to be in the center. So it means your plane is actually following the flight path, left to right. So if it's in the middle, it means the autopilot is actually following the flight path because of LNAV. And this is your vertical deviation, which tells you that you're descending as per the given profile. If this is above, then you are below the descent profile, and if this triangle is below, then it means you're above the descent profile. If you're above the descent profile, then it's an issue, because then there are chances that you will miss your intercept point for the glide slope, and you might not be able to land. But if you're coming at a lower altitude than the descent profile, then eventually at some point the plane will actually catch the descent profile. That's it. I'm actually entered a very high cost index. That's why the plane is going at a very high speed. But that's it. And if you press data, you will see the constraints and plus the times over here. At each waypoint, what will be the time when you will actually reach that point. So everything is looking good so far. The plane is at 32,000 feet. Auto brakes I have set to, let me just arm the speed brake again. Yeah, now the speed brakes are armed, as you can see it over here in the upper ICAS, which is the engine indicating and true alerting system. There is something really impressive about this plane, and it's the descent management. I have tried many flights with this plane, and the descent management is really good. However, for this route, the speed doesn't reduce over here at this turn. And I'll show you, it's kind of a sharp turn. And if the plane keeps on going at the same speed, it will miss the turn. And then this curve will be very big, a huge curve. So for this, I have to reduce the turn. But I have been doing flights from Dubai to Qatar and some other cities, and the descent management is really good. You really don't have to worry about the speed and plus the altitude. It follows all the constraints. So right now I'm descending to 4,000 feet, as you can see it over here, and the speed is 319 knots. Maybe I can reduce it once I'm at DF, I think, maybe 414 or the point after it. There's 415 and 416. Maybe before 416 I will reduce the speed. I'll keep it at 270 knots. I'm reducing the speed to 270 knots because at this point I will also reduce the speed to 270 knots, and I can extend the flaps because at this speed you can have flaps by 1 degree. If you're above this speed, 285, you cannot extend the flaps. Flaps actually provide you a drag, so that's why it's good to have flaps during the descent, because they help you in reducing the speed, and plus the plane actually follows the descent profile, and it provides an additional lift at the slow speeds. Now you can see that the color over here for the standard has changed, and there is a box appearing around it. So that's why we have to press it again and change it to this color, and then adjust the barometric pressure. As I've shown you before in the weather setting, that it was coming as 1013 HPA. This is actually the standard atmospheric pressure. As I've told you before, I'm using a clear skies setting for this video. Otherwise, if you're flying with actual weather, this will be different, and then you can move the knob to actually adjust the altimeter. The plane measures its altitude with the help of the barometric pressure. So any change in the barometric pressure changes the altitude. So that's why you have to actually adjust it accordingly, and then you will get the correct readings. So that's why before the landing you have to do this. Let me see if I can also get it from the ATC. If I get the air pull list, EDDF, can I see it? No, it's not appearing over here, right? Oh, yes, it's. I just saw it and disappeared. Yeah, here it is. So if I select EDDF, I can tune into ATIS, which is 118.030. If I click this weather information will come. You will not hear the ATC because I have muted the ATC communication, but you can see QNH is coming, 29 at decimal line 2. So you can set it over here. So with this, I can press this button. I can reduce the speed to 270. As you can see, the stern is coming and still the speed was very, very high. I can reduce it. And in order to further reduce the speed, I can have the speed brakes. I can activate the speed brakes. And now you can see there's a drastic decrease in the speed. And below 285 knots, I can start extending the flaps. I can set it to position 1. And that's it. Now for this descent, I will be manually setting the speed. I will not rely on the VNAV speed. Although the descent is right now managed by the VNAV, but the speed is managed by me. So right now you can see this triangle is in the center. So it means the plane is following the descent profile, and at certain point I will be able to intercept the glide slope properly without any issues. And plus you can also see the lateral deviation coming slightly deviated from the track, but it will just come back. I think by this point it will intercept this line. As you can see, this indicator is coming. So everything is good so far. Now I'm going to cross 10,000 feet. With this, I will turn on all the lights for the landing. This is the final descent point, FF25C. And soon also you will start to see the ILS information coming over here. As soon as you're in the range of the localizer, you will see the distance. DME, as I've told you before, it's direct distance measuring equipment. You can now see I'm in the range of the ILS, and this diamond has also started to appear. This is actually a diamond for the ILS. Over here, if you are aligned, if you're in the, you can say if you're aligned with the approach or with the runway, and this diamond appears, if it's in the middle, you can at this time press approach. You can even do that right now. But as the plane is descending as per the descent profile, so I will not activate it right now. I will just wait for it. And the DME is coming, which is telling you that the runway is 23.2 nautical miles away. Before the landing, I will disengage the autopilot by pressing this button. Okay, now I'm at 10,000 feet below. I can turn on all the lights, and you can see all the lights are now on. Seatbelt signs are automatically turning on and off, so they're, I think, on right now. Flap set to position 1. So you can just go at a high speed right now. If there is no speed constraint coming, if there is a speed constraint, then obviously you have to follow that. But right now you can see it was coming as, how much is it coming? Somewhere 240. So I can reduce the speed to 240 as the constraint is coming. So let's reduce it to 240. At 240, you can see 245 I can have flaps at 10 degrees. So now I can, as you can see, drag required VNAV, because then the plane will actually not follow the flight path. So I can extend the flaps to 10 degrees in order to have more drag. I can get rid of this error, and I can clear it. Now you can see I've, slightly above the descent profile. This thing should not happen. And the ILS indicator is also below. With this, I can activate approach, because this ILS indicator was within the threshold, so I can reduce it. And I can further reduce the speed, 210 knots. In order to control the descent, I can again have the speed brakes. Because if I don't have the speed brakes, it will take some time to reduce the speed, and the plane might not follow the glide slope, because right now it's following it. It's a bit tricky. No, It should not come back. I think I have activated the speed brakes or not. It should appear over here. Very gently. Now. Yep, now they are armed. Okay, now I think you can see the runway. And with this, I can further reduce the speed to 180. Let's reduce the speed. And that's it. So as the plane is following the glide slope, so we really don't have to apply the speed brakes. Right now you can see the speed is reducing. I can get rid of this. And you can see now we are 2,500 feet above the ground. Barrier is set to 563, 200 feet above the ground for the minimums. And what else? Over here, let me just show you. I just forgot to tell you one thing. If you go to index approach, you can select the flaps and the speed. You can see you can go up to 144 knots with full flaps, 30 degrees. So you can also do this. So you know that 144 knots is your threshold. You can further reduce the speed. Now 6 DME, so I can lower the gears. Start extending the flaps. Do not extend full flaps till the time the gears are down, because then you will hear an error. Landing gear, you will constantly hear this. So that's why, just remember this thing, okay? Adjust your view accordingly so that you are in a comfortable position to look at the runway. I think it's good. Now full flaps are extending, and I can further reduce the speed to 150. In order to disengage the autopilot, I can press this button, like hardly 200 feet above the ground. I want to do a safe landing. I'm very bad at landings. And as soon as I'm on the runway, I will actually reduce the thrust, or I'll keep it in idle, and I will perform a flare. A flare is actually a technique in which you, once you're near the runway or you are about to land, 30 feet above the ground, you put the thrust in idle and you pitch up the nose, because right now when the plane is descending, the nose is down. So you pitch up the nose a bit. So this technique is known as a flare. So I'll also perform a flare. Can we further reduce the speed? Yes, we can do that. So 400 feet. And just going to disengage the autopilot in some time. You can see properly aligned with the runway. The PAPI lights are saying that I'm slightly above the glide slope. As you can see, I'm aligned, but the PAPI lights say otherwise. Anyhow, approaching minimums. Let's disengage the autopilot, get rid of this error, and let's pitch down a bit. Properly aligned with the runway. Start pulling back. And reverse thrust activated, and that's how you land the plane. I think it was a good landing. I can give myself some good score. Okay, as soon as I'm at 80 knots, I can reverse thrust deactivated, and I can then apply brakes. That's it. So this is how you manage the descent and perform an ILS approach and landing. I hope I have covered everything. I'm just going to stop in the middle of the runway, because then I will be actually recording another video, a second part of it, or maybe the fifth part of it, the series, in which I will tell you what to do after you land and you park at the gate. So what are the procedures you have to perform after parking at the gate? With this, I would just like to end my video. If you've got any questions, you can ask me in the comment section. And if you want to add anything to this video, the comment section is there for you. Thank you very much for staying with me. Have a nice day. Hope to see you soon.